The best Damn League Show period is brought to you by eSportsBet. And what is eSportsBet? If you said the industry's leading crypto odds matrix, then you've heard me say it enough times. So you've probably also heard me mention that for first-time depositors, they can get 50% on up to 200 USDT. But we have an alternative if that doesn't quite tickle your fancy. What about if for your first ever wager, if you lost it, then up to 100 USDT, they'll forgive it and give you the 100 USDT back, or up to that amount. Now, actually, you can get this anyway, up to 30 on your first one, if you just contact the mods and say you want to take advantage of this offer. But if you contact the mods on the eSportsBet Discord, discord.gg/esportsbet, then say that IOE, Insight and Esports sent you, they'll give you up to 100 USDT back on the first bet. And by the way, if you don't lose the first bet, then why would you need it back? Spoiler, just enjoy the winnings. Now let's enjoy a beautiful show of League of Legends talking about LEC. Right, this is going to be another episode of the Best Damn League Show period. Obviously for this one, we have a guest, because if you haven't noticed, I try to spread it out a little bit, and especially for this one, since there are only 3 matches, well, to discuss at least, there's 2 to be played, obviously. In this scenario, we don't want to just retread the same topic. So as our guest, we've got Neon here from Misfits, who obviously sadly was eliminated recently, but whatever, still got further than everyone expected. Also, spoiler, you did used to play for Schalke and SK. Like, you wouldn't even be on these shows. Joke is you'd be watching with the rest of us, wouldn't you? Like, life is getting better in general. I mean, listen, I don't know if you know this, Neon, but things have gone so well for you this split, mate. Cadril had you like 3rd in MVP voting. She's like, fuck it, all right.
Yeah,
okay.
I love him for that.
You must be really good friends with you, I guess. Fuck it. You must have given him a few good carries in the US or something. What's going on with that? 3rd for MVP? All right.
Actually, I mean, I did duo Cadril to rank 1. When he got rank 1, I duoed him. I still have this memory. The game that pushed him to rank 1, I like stole Nash with like Kai'Sa W. So yeah, I can clearly
it's just
see
imprinted in his brain. Exactly, yes. He just knows like Leon's the man to rely on. He can basically, you can make miracles happen. You carried him to rank 1, so he knows that you are a true carry. Exactly. I thought it was just all the team fights that he carried, but apparently just carried Cadril. So what's your name, Dracos? Right, anyway, the episode's begun. That's right. That was just a parting shot. He's not on this episode, so don't worry about
flame
that.
Dracos for no reason, and then we just start the episode.
I mean, I have a good reason. His entire personality, all the things he says, how annoying he is,
Jesus,
the fact that he's dressed like he's at his prom with his dad's out. Yeah, I've got good reasons for it, but don't bring it up to the point. Just let it slide by.
What he wears is a good reason. If you wear clothes Thorin doesn't like,
any reason. I can come up with any reason, mate. Don't worry about it. I'll get creative with reasons. I'll just infer something about you. So one of the things I thought we would do on this episode also, Neon, which is why I thought it would be cool to bring you on, is I've just noticed not only this split, but especially in the playoffs. Dude, I think the entire game of League of Legends in the West is about bot lane right now. Even in LCS, where their picks, by the way, are an absolute joke that don't even look like they come from this year. Like, they're all playing like MF handshakes and stuff like that. I don't know what it is doing, but if you watch like it, not only LEC, but most of the other regions I'm watching.
It's not an A, it's a U. What the fuck? You guys sold us Han Sama. I don't know who the fuck is playing for Team Liquid, but that is fucking San Hama or some shit. I don't know who the fuck that guy is. That is the most fraudulent thing I've ever seen. He was dominating EUS. He was known as the Kalista Draven player. Now he's just a Jinx.
He doesn't even play Draven now.
Okay. Listen, like I don't really watch any LCS, right? Because I don't have the time. But I swear, like,
you have time
every single time I've turned LCS on, I saw Hans Sama on Seraphine, and that was the most funniest thing I've ever seen. Like, I couldn't stop laughing. Like, you just turn on LCS and you see Hans Sama on Seraphine.
Leon, I've got bad news for you. That's also literally a mega key, like, fucking pick in their meta in LCS.
It's the CEO of our LCS.
For real, it is. I'm not even joking. Like, that like auto wins when it gets picked in LCS. So anyway, as I say, it's like an alternate universe. So, but in Europe, what do you think on this, Neon? Because I think, like, as much as like when we came into the playoffs, everyone was like, oh, it's easy. You just only play like Sivir into whatever. Now it seems like there's way more variety. Like, obviously we've seen all the stuff G2's doing. I was even hearing some mad shit on the show I did yesterday, Someone Insight with your coach, where your coach told me something like at one point Heaver was trying to make your team run like a Zed Taric bot lane or something in scrims. Like, what's going on? What is bot lane the key to the meta right now? What do you think?
I mean, I think there's some champions that are really strong, right? And especially like Zeri and Sivir that come to mind, and Lucian. They're just like really oppressive at what they do currently. And I mean, if it's not going to be changed for botlane, then if it's not going to be changed for worlds, then I think botlane meta will still like stay the same. And I mean, in general, like, botlane is just the role to play to, because like essentially you're playing for 2 players, right? And now with Herald being like mega buffed and Drake's being like mega buffed, it's even more prevalent, because like usually if you have your bot lane unlocked on the map, it's easier to get either of these objectives. So bot lane is just OP. What can I say?
Oh, it certainly seems like it, yeah. Because another thing as well that I also wanted to ask about was, it feels like that whole take, right? Here's one thing I want to ask you about, right? Anytime in the split, now people realize it's been played that much, it can't just be utterly broke. Now, in the split, everyone just claimed, like, if you let them get Zeri, then you fucked up the draft completely. And then obviously then it became, if you let them get Yumi, you fucked up the draft. Do you actually think, are any of these champions at the status, Neon, where they actually should be, like, auto ban or, like, insta first pick if it's available? Are they actually that high on the priority for you?
Yeah, well, there's some champions that you're like, that are basically just like first picks, right? Like Zeri and Yumi. And like the reason for why teams have left it open previously or like decided to play into it is because, like, even though these picks at its core, it's like really broken, right? Like sometimes there is counterplay, there is strategy to play into it. And especially if you're red side, you know that enemy is going to pick it. So maybe for the whole week, you've practiced a strategy, right? That you think will work. So those are like literally the only times these champs get open. And like sometimes some things work in scrims, then you go on stage, boom, we can make it happen and suddenly Yumi looks like the most broken champ ever again. Same for Zeri, right? And I mean, sometimes it's just the meta. Like sometimes it's just like you handshake Sivir Zeri because both sides are good and you're fine with playing both sides, and you prefer to ban other champs because you believe that their strengths lie elsewhere, right? So it really just comes down to each team. But like I just find it really stupid whenever like the fans are like, yeah, but why didn't you just ban it? Why didn't you just ban this one singular champion? It's the only reason they won. Well, it's not really that simple, right?
Yes. Because actually, along these lines, one thing I want to open the discussion up for here is, it seems like in your match, this was something that happened because against your team, Fnatic did ban the Yumi all the time. They never did it. They made, like, Mercer had to do that, like Soraka pick up one point. But I noticed when they played the next series against Mad Lions, they were just leaving it up all the time. Similarly, when they played against XL, like certain teams, they are just leaving the Yumi up for, right?
Yeah, well, if you watch the draft, so like going into the series, we assumed that the only reason they left, because when we've played them, we've already had info on them from their best of 5 against XL, and they left Yumi open, right? But they played, every game they left it open and played Lucian, they played Lucian Nami. So we were assuming that that's their answer, and if you ban Lucian, they're going to ban Yumi, which is what happened. I think like in hindsight, we could have like experimented a little bit more in the draft in like the other games when we didn't have to ban Lucian, and we could have perhaps played Yumi Lucian side, right? But ultimately, that was their answer into the Yumi, and that's the reason why they ever considered leaving Yumi open, is because they had Lucian Nami to prepare, right? And the second we banned Lucian, they just banned Yumi without hesitation. So that was it for the series and for Fnatic, and it's probably like how it's going to stay with them.
Okay. What do you think, Dom? Because I thought a way we could start this was, like, that's the topic of the bot lane angle. Do you want to start with Fnatic? Because to me, Fnatic's another team that's had to, like, reformulate through bot lane. Like, the whole game's basically, like, let Upset carry the game at the moment, it looks like, for them. What do you think,
which
Dom?
is crazy considering he's such a bad AD.
It's weird, isn't it? I know.
Like, he's just such a terrible player, but then he's just like, they're drafting around bot lane. I don't know. I don't really understand that. It seems to me right now, just on the bot lane meta, that there's not many ADs that are actually versatile enough to play like the whole range of potential picks. Like right now, the way I see it is there's like Sivir Zeri trade, there's Lucian Nami, which can be like counter to those lanes potentially. There's Draven and there's Kalista, and then there's like some fringe ones like Senna Tom.
Yeah, there's the ones of Fnatic. The G2
there's
one,
like
rather,
Seraphine,
yes.
Senna. There's those types of fringe ones, but I feel like the meta revolves around those 5 AD champions like Draven, Kalista, Zeri, Sivir, and Lucian. Lucian with Nami only, and it feels like there's not an AD that's like versatile enough outside of like maybe Viper that can actually go to all of the picks. So it seems like right now the way that people are drafting is really about just like the specific ADs and what they actually play. So something that we saw Rogue doing is they're just banning, like, they decided, I'm pretty sure from Rogue's prep, they decided that they were just going to ban Draven every single game for the entire playoffs, because they're like, who do we play against? We play against Unforgiven first, then we're going to be playing against Flockhead, who's another Draven player. And, you know, like, in those 2 series, you kind of do your prep in the week 1. It's like, what are like the ones, is there anything we want to remove? Anything that we like don't want to play against at all? And they just decided to ban that. And now I think it's kind of interesting because Flock is the only Draven player left, but even when he plays Draven, it doesn't really look like an Unforgiven Draven. It doesn't look that scary. It's kind of like...
Can I comment on that actually?
Yeah, go on.
Sure.
So like, I will give you like a perspective of like what it feels to play against a Draven in a competitive game and why so many people like will never want to play against it. Because at its core, this champion, it's like you don't really have counterplay to it, because let's say you're playing a competitive game, right? and both sides of the AD, like they just farm early, right? Like Draven gets 100 CS, you get 100 CS, and at one point he has like a lot of stacks, right? So the most frustrating thing that can happen is if somehow he gets
just
like this
ultis the
random
Herald.
execute on his ultimate, gets like
Yep.
a random execute kill, and suddenly he's an item ahead of you for the entire game, and you can't win anymore just because of this like mechanic, right? Like it's not really like the champion and its kit. It's just like the fact that you farm, you get one kill, and boom, the game is over, right? So it's like essentially you're playing this mini game of whether will we be able to kill the Draven when he has his stacks, or is he going to get like a lucky kill somewhere and make the game over for me? And like personally myself, I don't want to play against that, and I'm sure it is the same for like a lot of other AD carries, right? So it's just a really big X factor in like every game that it's open. It's just like, is he going to get a kill? Is he not going to get a kill? And it's literally just the only reason why people don't want to play against it, why I don't want to play against it. It's like the unknown clutch factor that his passive has. So
Yeah. So what I ask you is like, why do you not want to play it potentially? Do you think it's just too much risk and like that? Do I get a one kill? You feel
yeah.
like it's almost like not in your hands?
Yeah, basically, I mean, I didn't play any Kalista Draven this season, not because I don't believe I can play the champs, but because when I look at us play, I look at our team's strengths and weaknesses, and I felt that our biggest strength was not early game. It was rather mid game and objective team fights and just team fights in general. So I didn't want to pick a champion that relies to get through early game, or like that has to go for early game, or has to go through early game slightly ahead. I'd rather pick champions that even if you go behind an early game, which is our weakest like strength.
Weakest strength, okay.
Weakest strength.
Okay.
Yes. As long as I get to 3 items and as long as I play team fights well, we'll have a bigger chance. That's what I believe, and that's why I mostly play hyper carries in my team. And I think that's also why we've seen a lot of success, is because I didn't pretend to try something that we're not good at. I rather went for what I knew was good for us, and I stuck with it for the entirety of the season because I ultimately believed every day that it was the best for us.
Yeah, Thorin,
No, I actually,
you can hear from Misfits coaching staff like just the positive mentality.
I know what you mean. Yeah,
you don't have strengths and weaknesses. You just have weakest strengths. Yeah, exactly. Like everything is a strength.
Like some are just weaker than others. That was actually unintentional. Like I didn't even think about it. That's how the wording came out.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm just fucking with you.
No, the thing is, I definitely agree on that premise. I even think, by the way, what you're saying, Neon, makes a lot of sense, because one of the things that people actually were very cynical with Misfits was they thought it's just like, oh, the team can only win doing this one thing. It's like, if anything, it was actually finding the identity, though, of the team that made the team win all the games. Like, once you got the identity, because here's the thing people don't think about is, yeah, maybe as like one of the star players, you could play whatever you want, but the question is, like, how does that help like Zanzara, or how does that help Mercer or something? Maybe for them it's better to streamline it. They know exactly what you're going to play. How are you going to play? You're playing a similar style each time. You're going to get to the team fight. They know what their job is. Makes it easier, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, the way I see it is like, right, like this is sports. There can ultimately be only one team that wins. And for like the other teams, like what you really look at is how you perform with what you were given, right? And I think I mean, I don't know if I can probably say this. Like from what I've heard, like Misfits was the team with the second lowest budget in the LEC.
Yeah, your coach said this yesterday. He said it might even have been. He said, Dom, he thinks the only team they definitely had more budget than is Astralis. That's it. So actually, these two splits are fucking insane, mate. Like in fact, the last three are insane for this team. It's unreal.
Yeah, so like when I look at the price to performance ratio, I think we've done well, you know, and ultimately,
the mega, yeah,
and ultimately like. That's like one of the indicators that you have to look at, because there's just one winner, right? And it's a sport. It's sports, so.
No, I'm with you, mate. The analogy I would give there is like if someone was coming third or fourth place, but they had like the 9th best car in Formula One. Like they're actually a god at driving, by the way. Like there's no way that guy's just good. Like you actually did an amazing job in that regard. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was something that we said consistently on the show. I mean, look, we thought that teams could be extremely cynical against you guys in best of fives. I thought that one thing that teams did wrong against you guys most of the split was just banning the Poppy Trundle like every fucking game, because I was like, you can just play that matchup. Like that matchup is not unplayable, and it's not like one of them is like. I don't think that Zanzara is such a god on Trundle or Poppy, I mean, where it's like
there's no real skill expression on the champions. Like the skill ceiling is it's like really low. For like the minimum threshold for good performance on the strap is really low, right? Like whether the player mains it or not, it doesn't really make much of a difference to me, at least.
Yeah. So for me, when I looked at your team, it just felt like in best of fives, you just know what Misfits is going to do, and if you have a full week to prepare for like, you know, a weak side top laner, a hyper carry bot lane, like the 4 dog junglers. I mean, look, if Zanzaro wants to run the vibe back, like I think you're fine with that in a best of 5. So I feel like it's just very hard to win with those conditions in a best of 5. Whereas in best of 1s, it's good. But I mean, I think it's an overperformance because most of us, like, I think I had you guys 7th. I think Thorin had you guys around the 7th spot before the split when we did
just
our
outside
tier list.
playoffs. Yep.
Yeah, just outside playoffs, and you guys end up in technically the 5th spot. I mean, I'd say that that's an overperformance, even based on our expectations, not even considering budget and everything else.
Yes. By the way, a couple of details that I found out from talking to his coach yesterday that might be relevant to this convo, because they actually address things we brought up so many times on this show. So around the draft angle, Dom, there's 2 really interesting ones there. One, the reason why apparently people didn't hard ban Yubi until really late, even against Misfits, is because when it would be picked in scrims, people just did that stupid shit where in the scrim they just play super aggro and dive bot lane 24/7 and just push you in and fuck you up with some like Kalista alternate lane. And so then they go like, see, we could deal with it. And then the joke is they leave it open in the pro game and don't do any of that shit in the early game. And then they're like, what the hell? It's out of control. Like, so it's one of those classic scrim ones, you know?
Yeah, there was a scrim that was leaked. I think it was game 1 Fnatic versus Misfits, where I think you saw that same type of thing be executed in that one, you know? That was it
made sense, so. Yeah. And then the other angle was this. The other one was actually a really subtle one, but you'll know exactly what I mean as soon as I start explaining it. Because they started 0-4, Dom, they got stuck in the little kids table group of scrims where you only get the scrim against like Astralis and SK and fucking ERL teams. So the joke is, when they actually started getting really good, these fucking idiots in the top of the league probably only started scrimming them then. So they were actually weeks behind on like figuring out how to play against Misfits. What do you think, Neon? Like, these angles seem like they played to your advantage to some degree.
I think definitely they have to some degree, right? I mean, I'll touch on the topic about Yuumi and scrims. Like, the reality of it is that, like, scrims, like, you can try your hardest to make it as close to a stage game as possible, but it's not really possible to simulate that because, like, you just don't get the same amount of stress, and it's just ultimately not the same, right? And the thing is, like, most of players, when they're under stress like this, they just don't play as aggressively, and like that's when you have to like actually think about or like try and imagine how you would have played the situation on stage, because on stage usually if you know that something could go wrong, you will most likely not go for the play, or like sometimes you will choose the safer option, and on scrims it's like more like, okay, well, I'll flip it, you know. And sometimes this is where the fake data comes from, right?
Yes.
So like ultimately it also takes skill to like be able to tell whether it will for sure work on stage. And I mean, some teams are able to do that, right? Like some teams are just good enough to like execute strategies like this. But the general gist of it is that it's just, I think it's probably like a worldwide phenomenon that the scrim games on average are way slower and way less kills per minute. And it's probably a thing that's going to be here for a long time.
Stage games. You said scrim, but I know you meant stage for that one. It's all good.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just ultimately like the human psyche, right? And it's not much to be done about it. So like also part of like knowing how to draft is like actually stimulating in your head the stage environment, like thinking, okay, would this work out? And I mean, yeah, we probably picked him in scrims a couple of times and he probably gets stumped with it, and then we picked it in an official game and we won. And yeah, we didn't really like we weren't really like looking at the scrim game and being like, oh, well, if you pick Yuumi, we're going to get stumped. We are more like, well, we believe that we can make it for early game because they probably won't go for this on stage. So that's just really it. And yeah, I mean, we did have a 0-4 start, and I mean, we didn't really get worse scrims. I mean, we've never been scrimming like the top teams during the regular split, but we've always had LEC scrims. So we've always been scrimming the bottom tier teams, right? And I mean, we were 0-4 with Zlatan, then we like picked it up with Zlatan, then we benched Zlatan, and we kept it going with Sanzara. Yeah, I mean, our scrims have never been the greatest, but like somehow when we went on stage, we were just able to play our best game. And I mean, ultimately that's what matters, right? And it did for us.
Yeah, for sure. With all the discussion around these matches, we've got 3 of the big teams, it's actually the same 3 teams from Spring Split, vying for the crown. G2 heavily favoured by most, Fnatic's getting stronger and stronger. Rogue seems like the one team where they're just falling and falling. All the draft reasons go against them. The players look a little bit dispirited. Do you really believe they're going to come through? But because of that, and because of the fact Fnatic's winning all these clutch series and game 5s and upsets carrying, and suddenly they're looking dangerous and they believe in it, the odds are enormous for Fnatic. And the problem is, as you'll see on the show when we discussed it, I actually think this is going to be a really messy series. I don't think you can truly believe in Fnatic as much as you can believe against Rogue. So actually, with these odds, Fnatic is 1.469. That's not bad if you're confident they win. I think the problem is the odds are too big for Rogue. It's not that I think Rogue is the better team and will win right now. Right now, I think it's very up in the air. But I think this is way closer to a 50-50. Or I would put it maybe like, 60-40 to Fnatic. So I have to say, I'm going to take the Rogue side for the bet because 2.634, I think that's ridiculous. So I'm not going to go enormous. Like what I'll do is I'll do a 750. There we go. 750 USDT. And I'm saying Rogue takes this, even though I actually think Fnatic will win, but I don't think they win in that many scenarios. What do you guys think? And let's get back to the show. Right, what about this then? So we'll bring it back that we were originally talking about Fnatic then. We just went on a big digression via like discussion about Yubi and all this. Right, one thing I want to ask you is this, Neon. What have you actually thought? Obviously, you've had a brilliant split as ADC. What have you thought of Upset? Because obviously he's someone where the problem I've noticed with Fnatic is this. Like so much of the baggage of the players from past years seems to like inform how people critique them now. So a lot of the critique of Upset still seems around people being mad about that shit at Worlds. Like, it doesn't even seem like it's about his game or what he's doing in Fnatic. So if we take that out of it, just as an ADC, what have you thought about like Upset over the split? And like, do you think they've changed strategy to like? It looks basically like they just put all the resource in him now.
Yeah, I'll get back to that question directly a little bit later. But first, like when you're playing a team like G2 or Fnatic, like you have the most diehard fans ever, right? Like if you're winning, they'll love you, they'll worship you for a god.
He means mentally ill. He said diehard. I don't know. Translation. Just
sure.
like,
that was a euphemism, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Really passionate fans, exactly.
Yes. Die-hard fans. Continue, Neon.
You're winning, they worship you as a god. The second you start losing, you get death threats in your mail. And that's just like, I think that brings like additional pressure to playing on a top team like G2 or Fnatic, right? And I think that was the same thing with Fnatic, right? Like if Fnatic was winning from the start this year, well, Upset is still a god, right? Second he starts losing, go back to the world's wife memes, right? And I mean, it's true that Fnatic did have a little bit of a slower start in the season, but like to me, this is probably because like these players, they've played a lot, they've been to Worlds many times, like not all of them, but for example, Humanoid has been to Worlds 4 years in a row, and that also means that you don't get that much time off. So like when the split starts, it's probably natural to say that they're not at their 100% effort and they're just not going to be playing the best. But I mean, they were actually 1 game away from missing playoffs. If we had beaten them in the last game of summer, they would have missed playoffs, which would have been kind of weird because none of this would have happened. We wouldn't have seen them step it up so badly. But I mean, they're actually playing 100% now. And like when I played them in regular season, when compared to when I played them in playoffs, it was like a night and day difference, and they all played way better than us. And I mean, ultimately, they were just able to pick it up because they're experienced players and they've been in these situations before, and like they are again proving their worth, right? I think like all of them individually weren't playing as good as they are right now. Like every single one of them has stepped it up, and I could feel it in the series against us. And I mean, also goes for Upset. Like when I played him in like the regular split, it was like always like whatever. Yeah, I'm playing Upset, but like he did actually gap me these games against Fnatic.
Fair play. What do you think, Dom? Because I have to say, like, what he's saying it's why on this show even I kept saying when they were like potentially like on the brink of making play, I kept saying the joke is every other team in those playoffs, that's the one team you don't want to get through the tiebreaker. You don't mind if Misfits makes it or Excel or Astral, like any of those, because the difference is those teams can't just like become 5 times better in the playoffs. Like at any point in time, it could have happened in the split. Like I even think, by the way, as an aside, I wonder if they actually were too stubborn during the regular split, because it looked to me like during the regular split, the one thing they wouldn't do is do like a band-aid because they thought we're all super duper players, like we'll figure it out. And at the end, they just did a simple band-aid, which by the way works amazingly in the meta we just discussed. Like bot lane does carry the game right now, and it'll look awesome in some of these wins. The fucking people up, mate. What do you think, Dom?
I feel like they did try that at points. Like they were playing. I've had a really, I don't know. Fnatic's been really hard to read because they came into the split like playing Draven, which was like not an upset champion. I was like, okay, like they're playing like Draven. That I guess that's kind of the idea, right? I mean, if you're playing with a Draven on your team, you're going to be playing through your AD,
absolutely,
generally, or you're going to be trying to like at least have them get strong at some point in the game. You'll be playing for cash-ins. and then they just like completely dropped. They like won a game. I think they won a game, lost a game, and then they just completely dropped it, and they went to like completely different champions.
Yeah.
And then they just had like some weird meta, like weren't they playing like Morgana support when nobody else was? Like they just have like all these like really strange picks. So it felt like they just didn't know what type of team they were. And then the other thing was like during the whole split, it's just Humanoid was just dying to literally air, like nonstop. He would just die to everything that fucking came in. It was like somebody walks through and just fucking throws like a fucking Trundle pillar at him, and he's just not flashing it until he's already dead. He had the one where he was playing Azir. He's playing versus Caps, I believe. It was Fnatic versus G2. He sees the guy on a ward, and then he just like gets a Z canceled or just dies to that. It's like, what? Like, but you literally saw him. So I don't know. I mean, I made the joke on Twitter. I was like, oh, did somebody just tell him that that Tomorrowland is over or something? And he responded, and he said, oh, they actually just told me it was in Malmo next week. So,
there you go. Okay.
Yeah, that was the cause. So it's been very hard to read Fnatic. But one thing, like, I mean, I don't even think that Upset and Hilly have specifically stepped it up that much. To me, the biggest change seems to be from Razork and Humanoid, because they're actually like working together, and just seeing the way that Razork plays the game, it just looks like he has insane confidence right now. Like he just walks into the enemy jungle and just fucking scraps it out. I mean, you see all those Poppy games where he sees a Trundle, and, you know, normally when you see like the junglers see each other in River at like level 4, they kind of just walk away from each other. You know, the one who's stronger, I mean, Trundle's like a little bit stronger if you get a 1v1 fight. So you'll see them kind of just like walk away. But you see Razork, he just goes in, procs his phase rush, stays on the outside, like waits his cooldowns, tries to do it again. Like it's just, it feels completely different than during the split when there was all these like random invades. It felt like there was no synergy between Humanoid and Razork. I mean, we were making the joke that it felt like they just hated each other when they were cooperating, because you'd see Razor go for like an invade, and it would be like, okay, maybe this can work if you guys both commit. But as soon as like the people showed, Humanoid was just like ditching him instantly. It was like, yeah, fuck that guy, he's already dead. Like, so I don't know. When I'm watching them play, it's really hard to know what exactly happened, because I don't even know if their like style changed. It just feels like they're individually playing better than they were before. So it's kind of hard to read for me. I'm not sure what happened. I feel like if you didn't get the full, you know, the full context of scrims and things like that, it's really difficult to tell what exactly happened, besides for them just playing better. Another thing I wanted to say about the scrim point, when you guys were talking about that, I feel like part of the reason why Misfits gets thrown out of that like scrim pool is I feel like just individual players care way more about the player that they're scrimming against directly than like practicing against a team, which is, I think, wrong, obviously. But when you have like a player like Wonder, and he gets to choose between like Vitality, who might be doing worse than Misfits, but he gets to play against Alfari compared to Irrelevant, it feels like the players are always going to want to play against like the better laning player, and they want to get like value out of that part of the scrim, as opposed to like the entire, you know, macro game and like, you know, playing objective fights together well, or like setting up drakes, that type of practice there. So I mean, that at least was my experience, and when I've talked to players, I've always got the vibe that they prioritize really heavily the quality of their opponent, like mechanically in lane, over, you know, how well the team is doing.
Yes. No, that was exactly the example I gave on Summoning Insight. I said on Summoning Insight, that's the thing fans always forget, that it's not even just about how good you are in the league, it's what your status as players are. So I gave exactly that example, Dom. I said, I bet you if you're Vitality, they could literally have been the worst team. But if you have Perks and Alfari, people are just going to say yes to the scrims, aren't they? Like, this be real. Like, everyone wants they still respect those guys.
I will just confirm that it's definitely a psychological thing. Like let's say I'm in Misses, right? But when we're like scoring BDS, I'm still like, oh, it's BDS. It's probably going to be an easy day, right? So like the top teams think the same about Misfits, right?
Yes.
So, and it just like for me, this is like the same in solo queue, right? Like I see players and I'm like, oh, this game is free, right? And I was like thinking a long time ago, I even suggested this throughout. Like, what if you made a feature that allows me to like disable the names of everyone in the game, so I just see like champion names, and then I can like truly like put myself to test, you know, like, because like my gameplay, it's influenced by who I'm facing, who I think I'm facing, right?
Sure.
And I think it plays a huge psychological role. And like at least once in my life, I would like to play a game without knowing who I'm facing, you know. And then I think only then I would like be able to like truly say like how well I play, you know. Because a lot of the times it's like you're either scared that someone is better than you, or you're overconfident that you're better than someone else, right? So I really like wish that one day this can like come true and be a thing in League of Legends, that you just have enemy summoner names disabled. You don't see their names. you know.
And that's how we'd find out that RJS is actually the GOAT, because he's the best on all 5
There you
roles
go.
with
There you
nameplates
go.
off. That's what
Okay.
he's been trying to say.
Yeah.
But people just, they see the name RJS and they associate him
Right.
with the biscuits
Yeah,
and
the
everything.
stigma,
and
exactly.
psychologically,
Yeah.
they're just not able to correctly
Exactly.
analyze this player as
Yeah.
as his play as the faker of League of Legends.
Basically, it's that meme. Like, if he actually was acknowledged for his true ability without the stigma of like associated reputation, we'd live in like that, space colony where it's like curving round with all like the sustainable gardening and that. Like, that would be the world we live in. But we don't. We live in this world because sadly people just refuse to accept that RJS is indeed the Aptor/Faker-esque character who could just dominate the game. Exactly. Right. What about this then? The one thing I have the question about, right? It comes off the point I said earlier about, like, obviously the reason why no one wanted Fnatic in playoffs is, what if they ever did get it together? What if some of these players start playing well? There's a reason why everyone called it a super team. So here's my question for you, Neon. This is the hardest question, I will say it, but let's just start the discussion. Before they played Mad Lions, right? When they were playing you, I think a lot of people thought they would beat Misfits, but some people thought Mad Lions would win. Supposedly throughout the split, they were the better team. After Fnatic beat Mad Lions, I mean, they play Rogue and then it's the final. Like, there's a world where they might even win the LEC now. No one's been thinking about that the whole split pretty much, but we have to actually have this conversation. Is Fnatic good enough to actually potentially win LEC now, do you think?
I think they have a good chance. Yes, I've played against them, and to me it was a different team. And I think personally, they'll probably beat Rogue too, and I think it's going to be G2 Fnatic finals as scripted, right?
Sure, yeah. What do you think, Dom?
Yeah, I think the same thing. I don't know. It feels like whenever there's a series that's going to be close, you should just never bet on Rogue. It just is what it is. It feels like they just can't separate themselves from like the pressure, and people will be like, "Oh, it's just a meme." Like, I saw the reaction in some of the comments in our last episode where it's like, "But like, shouldn't you just take it for what it is?" And to me, when I see the way Rogue plays, it definitely just feels like they just don't have that competitive mindset when in really close games. You could see it in the series that they played versus G2, right? There was times where G2 would make a mistake and Rogue would capitalize, and Rogue would have a little bit of like pressure in the game, and it would be like, ooh, like, what's going to happen? How is G2 going to overcome this situation? And it would be like Rogue just instantly would give it back. Like they would just throw it back every single time so quickly without G2 having to actually pull out a miracle play. And they weren't able to win any of those games where G2 actually did make some mistakes. So yeah, I mean, I'm with Neon. I think that Fnatic will beat them. I just feel like the momentum of both teams is really skewed towards Fnatic, and it feels like this is probably one of the only points where Fnatic actually looks like a team. I mean, even looking at the player cams, they're like smiling and shit. I didn't see many smiles when they were like fucking running it down. I mean, you'd see like the awkward, like embarrassed smile that like sometimes it'd be like, haha, like I fucking entered, and they're like smiling, but you could see like behind their eyes they're like, fuck, man, like this is actually going really terrible. Maybe we're not going to make playoffs. They actually look like they're genuinely having fun, and they have nothing to lose, right? Like they've already, even though they are a super team, right? And maybe the expectations originally were for them to win or for them to like be top 2. It feels like that pressure was really like relieved once they had such a bad like spring. It feels like now people are more like, oh shit, if they beat Rogue, that's actually an accomplishment. If they go to finals, even if they have a close series and lose versus G2, people will still put some respect on the player's name. So for me, I just feel like they don't have much to lose right now, and the pressure seems to be on Rogue, and that's normally never a situation where I expect Rogue to pull through. But who knows? Maybe I'm just looking too deeply into narratives, and Rogue will be able to figure things out.
No, I know what you mean. The problem is, to this day, I'll still point this out, Rogue have never ever had a super dominant, convincing series with this core of teams where they make you believe they can win the LEC. So even when people will say, like, what about that reverse sweep of Fnatic? Yeah, they were getting fucked up in the first 2 games. Like, look, they weren't getting, like, totally dominant. They were in those games. But, like, the Fnatic should have won those 2 games. They did win those 2 games. And there's another world where that could have just been 3-0, obviously. So, like, that's the problem. I agree. Until Rogue actually prove it, I can't just believe in them. Like, I do think this could be if I had to guess, I think this could be like a super messy series, the Rogue Fnatic one. I could easily believe both teams win games, etc. Probably draft will be really interesting, but even there, Dom, I have to sort of side against Rogue, because as much as people flamed Yamato, all I'll say if you're a fan is this: the teams he didn't ban Yumi against, he beat, and the teams he did, he beat. What more do you want? He's actually drafted based on the opponent, for fuck's sake. That's what you're actually supposed to do, fans. You don't just draft on your own list like when we hate Yumi, so always ban it. Like, no, if Mickey X can't play the shit, make him play it. Make him think that's the fucking first pick and blow their whole draft on it. It worked. So my problem is this. I feel like Rogue could so easily fuck up this draft mix. I've told you, one thing I hate about Rogue is they always seem to start each series with a totally different idea of what the meta is. And the first game, at a minimum, dude, they always do a really weird draft where it's like, what? You think those are the strongest picks, and then the stupid thing is when they lose, they just immediately go away from it all. Like whatever they were actually doing, they're like, wait, abandon that, it doesn't work. Like what? This is all your prep for the whole series. What?
Yeah, I mean their prep didn't even make sense for this G2 series because like they went into the Mad series, right? They were like, Marong plays Jarvan every fucking game with his weird ass build where he goes like an Executioner's Calling, then he builds like his tank item, and then he builds like a GA randomly. Like that was his thing. He was like, I play Jarvan every game. And then they're like, you know what, versus G2, we ban Jarvan every game. We just fucking first ban Jarvan. It's like, what the how did you even like I thought maybe on red side that kind of made sense because I'm like, oh, maybe because Jankos also plays Jarvan, it's gonna be like really high priority on Jarvan.
Okay. Can I actually touch upon that? I think the reason for why Rogue banned Jarvan is because was it spring finals or semifinals these team faced?
Upper bracket final of spring.
Final.
I think Jankos played Jarvan like every game, and I think he gave Comp some serious trauma. So I'm pretty sure it's just Comp
from the
saying,
final, right? Okay, from the final, right? Okay.
So I'm pretty sure it's just like, okay, I'm not playing against this guy's fucking Jarvan.
PTSD sees the Jarvan.
It's literally just PTSD, and I understand it. And I mean, I'll just comment on the match as well, on the Fnatic Fnatic Rogue. I think these teams are extremely similar. They both have like kind of like a weak side top laner that they don't play towards. They kind of both have a mid laner that likes to play the control mages. It's like their preference, right? Like both Larson and Humanoid to me, they're quite similar. They both love their Azirs, love their Victors, love their Sylas, right? And both teams love to play around their bot lane with like aggressive picks. And jungle also, to me, seems well, kind of familiar because they're both playing like the Jarvan, Propi, Trundle, whatever, play for the team and gank meta. So I think this series should be, at least to me, very entertaining because it's literally like the clash of styles because both teams have the same style. So it should be bloody, in my opinion, you know?
Yeah, I just don't believe, like, I know you say that Larson loves the Sylas. When I watch him play Sylas, I feel like he shouldn't love the Sylas. You know, he's like, it's like when Bjergsen picks Sylas. It's like the same type of thing where it's like, why do you want to be a Sylas player so badly? Is it just like, is this just look cool or something? Or is it just like an ego thing with mid laners where they're like, bro, like, oh, like Chovy plays Sylas, bro. Knight plays Sylas. Exactly. I have to play Sylas, like to be those guys. I never feel good about a game where Larson is like early picking like the fucking Sylas.
Well, it's probably one of the cases where it probably worked in scrims, but it doesn't work on an official stage. But I mean, even if it's not the Sylas, I do believe like the rest of our champion pools, they love to play the same shit.
Yep. Yeah, I just believe in Humanoid right now. Whenever if Humanoid ever looks good and Larson looks good, I'll always just believe in Humanoid to win.
I mean, to be honest, like the first games Humanoid played on Sylas. Like this split, I'm not sure if it was the first round in playoffs against Excel. He looked quite bad on it, but then suddenly he ran it, and the next week he's like god on the champion. You know, so like what the fuck happened there?
Also, I will say as well, like one thing I was a bit underwhelmed by is even though actually against the Mad Lion series, Rogue was able to win on the Nami Lucian. Like one of those games, they had no business even being in that one where they were just pushed off the tower at the beginning, like game 5, and had no way. That was game 4, I think that was. Like they had no way even into the game. Like that's just mental in itself, mate. Like you can't rely on that. Like if that happens to you again, the game's just over. So like the difference is, I think the upset in Hillsang when they've run the Lucian Nami, it looks way better, dude. It looks like probably the best in the league. Thoughts,
Neon? I mean, the level 1 thing, it happened to me in my last series, and I was like the most traumatizing competitive match that I've ever played.
Yep.
And I mean, that game, honestly, I don't think it's a match of like Lucian Nami thing. Like it was more of like that they didn't expect it and it happened. So like I don't think the Lucian Nami can do much about it, right? Just like we couldn't do much about it in our own game. So I was just really surprised they won that game, right? Because to me the game was over level 2. And I mean, you could see in Fnatic versus us game 1, like if they properly execute this strategy, which they did, the game is over and I can't play for the rest of the game, you know? Like it's just unwinnable. So I am extremely surprised that Rogue was able to win the game starting off like this, you know? Like I would never have imagined that they can possibly come back. So the enemy team must have fucked up really badly. But if you want to compare, just watch the game. That Fnatic did this against us. The game was just like I have no idea to this day how to beat it, you know.
Well, I mean, I think your jungler just can't start topside. He can't start enemy red buff when you can get pushed. I mean, I feel like this has happened a lot of times in NA where like there was a really famous game where this happened. It was Suning versus TL in group stage of 2020. And NA had the mentality of playing like Twitch Recon, which is like pretty weak in lane, but they're like, oh, we play Twitch Recon and it's actually fine because we just like, you know, play passively the first couple levels, and as soon as we hit 6, like even if we're down 10 CS, we're just gonna get a kill. That was like a thing that, you know, NA really liked. We had a high priority on Twitch Recon, and you know, Suning was playing Draven into it, and we thought that was fine. And then all that Suning did was they just level 1 invaded bot side, took enemy red buff, and they just split the map vertical jungled, and the enemy jungler is topside, and then they just dive you over and over again, and there was nothing you could do. So I feel like in those, go for it.
Sorry for interrupting. Okay, to be fair, like also going into the series, like I heard a lot of people say, yeah, Upset is like, he's scared, he will not play Kalista, you know, and like in the back of my mind, I knew that he played Kalista before and he could play it again, you know, but I kind of like let myself believe that it won't happen, and then when I saw them pick it, I was like, fuck my life, man. not like this, you know. Yeah. So I mean, definitely, I mean, that's also why I think he's like stepped it up, because like it's like an aggressive pick, like toward like ever since the first week where I played like Draven in 1 week and they never played it again. They have not played a single game of Kalista. I was like, a lot of people are just assuming that he just doesn't want to play these high pressure picks, early game picks, but he like when it actually was needed, he went for it and like could perform on it really well. So that's also a thing that came to my mind.
It's also a game 1, so you know, like you can try it in game 1. If it doesn't work, like you have places to adapt throughout the series. Yeah, I wonder if he'll potentially pull, if they'll scrim it all and they'll try to like pull out the Draven or something, if they'll scrim with it and try to pull it out, because that's something that Rogue has been banning.
If you remember, the interesting one was when they were actually down 0-2 to XL, he played Twitch.
Yep. Yeah,
I mean, I agree. It seems like he'd pull out the pocket picks if he wants.
What was more interesting there is that he was sang pick Yumi. I don't think I've ever seen him play Yumi before. So it was just like a kind of a YOLO draft, you know, like they'll never expect us to first pick Yumi and we're gonna get a good draft because of it, and they did get a good draft because of it. So
yeah, I mean, it's definitely true. I think it's really weird because Hillsong, I still don't really think that he's good on range supports. Like the Nami ults have became a meme in my chat where people just count every single like weird Nami ult he does, because I mean, we talked about it, we beat it to death last show, but this guy cannot stop using the Nami ult as an engage. Like anytime that somebody looks like they're remotely catchable by Nami ult, you just see him pull out the fucking tidal wave and you see it like slowly roll towards the enemy team. And then the enemy team
thinks the Nami ult is like the Arnold or something. That's the way he uses it. It's so stupid.
You can take Hylissang of an engage support. You can't take engage out of Hylissang.
There you go. Yep. No, it's true, mate. That used to be my joke back in the day. It's part of why I used to int when like the meta was bad, because he would just make the same play he would make on like Ricard, but he's not on Ricard. He can't get back out. It's like, what the fuck? Like that's just Hylissang, isn't it?
I still remember this clip from like Fnatic voice comms. They're playing Kalista Braum, and Hylissang is like 10 HP. He gets Kalista ulted away from the fight, and then he says, "I'm going in," and he just ults himself into 10 people with 10 HP and just dies. Like, that just sums him up so well to me. But I completely respect it. It's like he does what is needed for the game and for the team, and like that's ultimately why he's been like so good so many times, right? Because he's like the least afraid player to like do something, right? And I mean, I have nothing but respect for that.
I would say, by the way, that even shows the strength of the players in this team. This isn't even a Hylissang meta at all, but like you're saying, there's a world where they can even win the LEC now. Like, they're actually looking pretty good as a squad. I wanted to throw in another thing as well, because another reason I have to say I'm quite down on Rogue, and I think even if they beat Fnatic, they're not beating G2. Another reason why, Dom, is, as far as I can tell, they're actually probably going to get draft gapped by both teams. Because the other angle on G2, if you look at G2's series, is, dude, they not only have their own unique shit, like they can play Yasuo and Senna and all these Senna bot lanes, but I even heard, I can't remember what it was that Carter was telling me yesterday, he even said they have like another thing that he like infers they probably have like another fucking, I can't remember what the pick was. He had another pick that they haven't even played yet, but they probably do. They just didn't need to yet, like, because they've 3-0'd everyone. So it's like, at this point, I actually feel like G2 is the best team and as the draft Nirvana. You have to beat Fnatic anyway to get there. And then on top of it, if you're Rogue playing G2, you always just lose to G2 anyway. So it's like every factor seems like it's against Rogue this weekend. It feels like they're just going to be third. Which, listen, They still won a series. They're going to go to Worlds. For them, that is sort of fine. But it isn't in the sense, Dom. This is why, if you notice, every time I've had rogue players on shows the last few years, the first couple of years, yeah, you do what you do with everyone. It's like when Neon comes on, you're like, oh, it's a great job getting fourth or whatever, or third. Like, you've improved since before. That's good because of where you were in your career before. But if you're someone like the rogue guys now, every time you don't win LEC, you actually threw away an opportunity. Your team, every split, was in position to potentially win LEC, and you didn't. Like, dude, you don't just get 10 chances in a row. Like, if you get, like, they are 4 or 5 in a row where you're really, like, second or third best, or even considered the best at times, you got to convert some of those. Like, that's where you'll look back in a few years in your career when you're on some bad team and be like, what the fuck? That was my chance to win. So I think the pressure's also insane on them, by the way. I know it's weird because they haven't won yet. They should, in theory, be the ones who are like, we never won, so we haven't got any pressure. I think they have all the pressure, mate. I think the joke is G2 is like, we're probably going to win anyway. We're super confident. Fnatic, as you say, they're like, we've made Worlds anyway, and basically it's sort of like house money. We may as well just fuck around and see if we can make the final. If you're rogue, the actual crazy thing is they're the team with the most pressure. I think everyone still thinks they suck. Most people are probably going to flame them when they go to Worlds. Like, I think it's going to be a really rough weekend, mate. They're going to have to do some heroic shit I haven't seen before if they're going to come through this.
Well, I mean, they're going to need to come in with a proper like draft prep because it feels like they always somehow psych themselves out of like, you know, picks that should be good for them. Like, I mean, I don't care how traumatized you are against fucking it's a fucking Jarvan. Like, Jarvan is not that broken of a champion right now. Like, that is like, as far as junglers go, that's like one of the actual like naturally weakest picks. There's some things you don't want to pick. You don't want to play like Sivir into Jarvan, but like, they played Zeri into Jarvan. Like, does a Zeri really give a fuck about a Jarvan? Like, should you really care? I think that fucking LPL teams would laugh if they drafted fucking Zeri, Yuumi, and the enemy team just takes a Jarvan into it. They'd be like, all right, like, sure. Like, I guess this guy just doesn't want to win the game. So I feel like they need to just be willing to try something. It seems like they're so willing to just give up. Like, oh no, we have to ban it. Like, we can't even deal with it. Where you have to realize you are gonna have to give them something that they're remotely good at. Like, we have 3 fucking opening bans. At least let's not give them, like, let's at least leave up things that we can also play. That's what I want to see. Like, if you want to ban Draven, I'm completely fine with that. Like, if you went in and you're like, we can't play against Draven, you know, all the factors that Neon said earlier in the episode, I think that that's reasonable. I just don't like the fact that every single time that I see them draft, it's like they have some just weird, like, meta read, or they'll go the other way. Well, they'll be like super confident. They'll be like, let them have their absolute best shit. Like in spring, what did they do? They gave Ari the first game when Caps was just shitting on everyone with Ari. They're like, yeah, we just give Ari here. I mean, look, sometimes when that works, it looks like a god. Like, you look like a god, kind of like when Yamato left up the Yuumi in the XL series. I still think that you have to be like more reasonable, more practical with what your advantages over another team are. So yeah, I just don't believe in their prep, really. It feels like they never come up with like logical things in the beginning, and yeah, somehow they're always at a disadvantage from game 1. So I mean, most of the time they're trying to battle back in these series because of what happens.
I will say though, I have thought of one way they could win though. The one way they could win is obvious, but it's just like you can't rely on this. It's actually just if Malrang does Smurf. Like, if he tries all the ganks he does, but they just work for the first, like, beginning of every game, like, there's a world where that can be the game changer. The problem is, I also think that's why no one believes in Rogue anymore. Like, as much as they're still a good team, like, whatever happened when they had Malrang in spring, they haven't been like that in summer. What do you think, Neon? It feels like that all of them separately are still good, but I really do think they blew it in spring, mate. I thought that was their chance where their team looked like its absolute best. Like, even the new player looked awesome. He's still good, but he's not like some, like, fucking super jungler, is he?
I mean, I think Malrang is pretty good because to me he's like the perfect team player, which is what you want in a team environment. But
He's
sometimes
a dog
I think
jungler and 80 carries like dog junglers.
There you go.
Sometimes he might be a little bit too much of a team player. He might buy too many utility items. He might buy too many pink wards, essentially fucking himself over and like putting himself in a position where they can't contest like side lane with his mid laner or like a top laner or something. He just has to be a leash to his bot lane, right? So maybe it's like if he could like introduce another way of playing, or like maybe try and be on like more of like a carry jungler once or something. But I mean, it just feels to me like sometimes he plays too much for the team and it ends up being too useless in the game to, you know, do anything. Like this week he was playing this Xin Zhao and he had like at like 15 he had like a Bami Cinder, and like, I mean, if I see Xin Zhao, I want to see him with the Gordring Charisma and jump in, kill one guy at least, you know, not. You know, like
he always goes weird builds as well. That's the other thing.
He's
isn't
the
it?
edgiest motherfucker. Like this guy is just so fucking edgy. He just can't build real. Like he just refuses. If there's ever a build that everyone's going, he's like, nah, bro, that's shit. Like, I'm gonna show my personality here. Then he does like the worst thing ever. Like the game that Neon's talking about. Okay, so he goes Bomby Cinder, Executioner's calling Rush into Bomby Cinder, and then he completes his chainsword right after. It's like, what the, like, how do we even get to this point?
Okay,
Half of his builds are all health and no defensive stats. That's like almost every single one of his builds. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me.
I think the Giga Chat thing about Malrang is, I remember this from Spring. He just like randomly whipped out this first strike Jarvan technology, and suddenly like everyone started playing it, but it was never good. It was always trash, and it was just so funny that like people actually believed that it was good when it was trash all time long. But
yeah, I mean, people like he'll play well sometimes, but then people like conflate him playing well with the items that he's building, where it's like those are two completely separate things. He's playing his champion well. What he's building is not doing him any fucking favors. Like at the beginning of this year, or the beginning of the split, he was doing the Bomby Cinder into fucking Giant's Belt tech every single time. And I was like tweeting that it was bad, and even the road coaches were like tweeting at me about like how it's actually good. It's like, oh, but like at this break point it's actually better. And then he just stopped doing it out of nowhere. So it's like he didn't even believe it was fucking good anymore himself. I don't know. It's really weird to watch him play. I just feel like he refuses to build normal items.
I don't really have a clue about like jungle items or whatever, but like sometimes you really gotta wonder, like, is it actually his idea, or is it like someone on the staff brainwashing him, or does he like have this like guy who like goes to him in the next cell sheet and he's like, look, if you build this and this, you're going to be like, I don't think I've ever seen him like talk about it. Like you're probably never going to know what like his thought process behind it is. But like, what if maybe one day, what if the next series he comes up with like some crazy item that is just randomly going to win them the game, like, you know?
What happened? Probably not, but could.
Probably
the other
not,
reason
but...
as well, by the way, here's the other reason I have a problem believing Rogue can win. Because if this was normal and it wasn't this current like meta that we have in the playoffs now, I would say the edge they have is the bot lane. Like they have a better bot lane on paper than G2. But have you noticed how all the things I was talking about in the draft, they're all just like propping up the G2 bot lane and making it super dangerous in the draft, in the game, stuff like the Senna, Yasuo. You can just survive with that in a way you never could normally. And then, spoiler, you are at the top side of the map was already the strength for G2. So I just think at the moment, like every factor feels like it goes against Rogue, unfortunately. They don't really have any sort of win conditions. Like, how do they win? Can anyone theory craft how they win either of these series?
Yeah, I don't know. Larson gets a 0 every game, and he just completely fucking smurfs or something. I don't know. It seems really hard for them to win. I mean, maybe they'll end up, playing better, but with the form of both junglers considered as well, it just seems like Razor is like at his absolute peak. He's playing the best league he's played since like summer of last year. And Humanoid's playing well too. I mean, Humanoid has always looked decent into Larson, besides for that one series. Like, it's always just been a mismatch historically. And then when you just add on to that the prep and the way that they're like psyching themselves out of a lot of the picks, I just don't really see what their advantage is going to be, besides for just simply like playing better. Like they just have to play better individually, and I'm not going to just bank on that.
Do you have G2 as the winner? Like, if we skip forward to the end of the week, next week, G2 will be the champions, Neon.
Yes, definitely. I think G2 is right now, I would say, like, by far the best team. Not because they're actually the best skill-wise, but because if they want, they can just gap you in draft every single time, and there's not much you can do about it, And they also have multiple win conditions on their team. Like, both their solo laners are insane and have insanely deep champion pools. It's just like, in what universe do you win a draft against them? And if you're playing against the team that's really good and can outdraft you every game, like, to me, it just seems almost impossible to beat. Especially with like how other teams are in the league right now, and how the other playstyles are like way more set in stone for the teams, right? So I think G2, to me at least, is the clear favorites. I think their only weakness is that they haven't shown to play strongly towards their bot lane. They're a bit more like a solo lane oriented team, and like currently bot lane is OP, right? Like we've talked previously about. Mm-hmm. And like that's the only way I can see them losing, is just like some bot lane just like steamrolling them over, possibly. But they also have good bot lane picks to prevent that from happening, right?
Yes,
like they can play all these Senna lanes that are very good at neutralizing. They can play the fucking Tankenge, that is a very good neutralizer. So I believe that with the proper draft, like, to me, G2 is the clear favorite.
And also, by the way, that's where, like, I noticed the player everyone's praising the bot lanes, of course, Tag Harmus. Like, mate, this guy's champion pool, that's like worth its weight in gold when you come to a playoff like this, especially when you're in the weaker lane. Like, he's just enabling all this draft shit.
Yep, I think Targamas is good. I think their biggest weakness is definitely their bot lane. I mean, but they draft in ways like Neon says to just get their to really just cover their biggest weakness. So when you look at their drafts, I don't think they're picking Senna Seraphine because they feel like they're really good laners. I mean, you saw them try to play Lucian Nami. That was against Misfits, and yeah, I mean that was just not it. Like, I mean, it just doesn't look like they have any idea how to play that lane. So I think that maybe there could be like advantages if other teams like ban the Senna, force them to play into like these like Zeri Sivir lanes. Like maybe those aren't like the most lane dominant, but I'm not sure if G2 will be able to like play around their bot lane and carry a game. But the way that I see it really going is if Fnatic end up playing them, which like I'm thinking that Fnatic's going to be rogue. So if Fnatic end up playing them, you're going to see Lucian ban every single game from G2. They're just not going to even give them that possibility. And the best you're going to get is like Enchanter versus Enchanter bot lane with one of like the scaling ADs, which doesn't seem like Fnatic would be able to pull off if, you know, there's a bunch of fires going on the top side of the map.
Yeah. That's true. Oh, there is also one of the, this is why I actually said for me, if Rogue ends up playing G2, also what ruins it is that all the crazy picks are on the bot lane side. Because the other angle I would have bigged up is like the Trimby angle. Like he has this monster champion pool. You can play all stuff like pull out a locks, whatever you want, but that's going to be irrelevant if you've got some safe bot lane. Like, won't matter, will it? Oh, by the way, on the side of the other thing I have to say as well as this, Dom, bearing in mind, Rogue has to play Odoamne into Wonder, Odoamne into Broken Blade to win the LEC. Mate, they cannot be fucking doing these Renekton picks on Odoamne. Like, it's just death, mate. When I see that come in, I know the game's over already. It's not that he isn't a competent player. It's if you ever look at Odoamne in his career, the reason why carry picks don't work for him is because usually his team's so used to him being weak sides. Like, they just abandon him. Like, they never properly fucking play around him, even if he gets kills on these champions. So, like, to me, it's like, I hate to sound like LS from 2 years ago, but, like, for a player like him, I would never be picking the Renekton, mate. You're just going to get fucking evaporated in these team fights, and you're just going to be behind because of the way their team play. Like, it looked whack every time they drafted it, man.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I just don't know what they could, what they really are going to play, because it feels like teams are just, I mean, the reason why I feel like he's picking the Renekton is because, I mean, Renekton is historically good into Aatrox. So other teams are just blinding the Aatrox and being like, yeah, counterpick us. And then the counterpick that he uses is just not good. So I don't know if they have to start banning the Aatrox or what, because Aatrox is also good into tanks. Like, so like Aatrox is supposed to have a winning lane versus like Gragas, Ornn, Sejuani, all of those, like if the Aatrox players play really well, they could win. So I don't know if the best way for Rogue to approach it is just ban the Aatrox. I think that would maybe make sense. So then they could, you know, play these tanks and there's not like a really good pick against it. Like, sure, you know, Wonder might play the Gwen or something, but I mean, at least then you're trading off things. Like, obviously the Gwen can do more damage in team fights. Ornn's a better frontliner, so maybe you can play like front to back comps and have an advantage there. I'm not really sure what they should do, but I definitely think this Aatrox isn't doing them any favors, because their mentality is you pick Aatrox, we pick Renekton, and when they play Renekton, it just feels like you have two useless frontliners. You have Renekton, and then plus you have whatever the fuck Morong's playing, like his Jarvan or his Xin with this like tank off tank chainsword build. It just doesn't seem. It doesn't seem like when they match up into other teams and the other team has an Aatrox plus there's like a Senna Seraphine like buffing them on the other side, or they have like, you know, a Sejuani or all this stuff. It just doesn't feel like it can actually match up.
Yeah.
Plus, they're never going to pick it themselves. They'll never pick the Aatrox, so don't worry about that. Go on.
I feel like this Renekton Aatrox top lane, I feel like it's like kind of the Sivir Zeri of the bot lane. Like, I think both champs kind of do the same thing, and I think for Renekton at least, I think it's really OP if it gets paired with like a Trundle or a Sejuani, like something that gives you that really strong 2v2, and you can actually get Herald and like get top lane advantage. But like on every game that that Renekton doesn't get ahead, it's a different champion, right? And yeah, I think the same kind of goes for Aatrox. It's just like both are like frontliners, bruisers that want to heal, but if they're like not ahead, then you know they're kind of disappointing. So like to me, if I have Renekton Sejuani, Renekton maybe Trundle for like really good 2v2, like I think it just comes down to the jungle pick and the 2v2, and like if they can get something out of it, maybe like a dive. But if you leave it alone on an island, then yeah, it's probably better if you play like Ornn or something.
I mean, the other thing is that he's specifically like using a rune page to try to win the lane extra hard. Like, he's going PTA Renekton, which is like gonna be really good at like level 2, level 3 when he's trading versus the Aatrox, and then afterwards, like, you'd probably rather have Conqueror for the rest of the game. So it doesn't even feel like they like for what he is trying to do and how he wants to play the game, it doesn't seem like the team either understands it or it's being communicated, or they really view that as an identity and a potential like strong part or win condition for the team. And yeah, I mean, I do think that making Renekton your win condition is normally pretty hard in the meta right now, unless it's like, I mean, I think most of the effectiveness of Renekton comes from the fact that it's a flex in draft. Like if you're willing to play it mid, I think then you have like a lot of things that can be opened up. But I
goes out saying Larson will never be playing that mid. I'll tell you that right now immediately.
Exactly.
You can put a bet on that immediately.
So that's my point, is the Renekton picks, you can't even be a fucking flex. It's always just going to go top lane anyway. So I don't even think they get that benefit from it. So it just feels like there's just, I don't know, bro. It's probably just back to Orin, back to Gnar, back to Sejuani, and just fucking pray that your bot lane is just smurfing or something.
Neon, what's your take on Comp? Because I find him to be like a really hard player to get a read on. Because sometimes he does look like one of the best ADCs. Does exactly what you want as an ADC. You get him in the team fight, he'll output loads of damage. He plays the right champions. But I also notice sometimes it feels like they don't even play around him. So I'm not quite sure what they think of him. So what do you think of as an ADC?
Yeah, I think it's really good. I think he's definitely top 3 in the league. I mean, I think some of these playoffs games he hasn't been playing as well as he did in like the regular split, but I've always considered him like top 3. I think he had like one shaky series maybe when I think it was against Mad Lions, where like was it their first series?
Yes,
I think it was, right? Yeah. And I thought that series like he was playing like way worse than usual, so maybe like playoffs come and it's a little bit different, but I've always considered him really high, and I think he is up there in like the top 3 for me.
Who are your top 3? Who are your other 2?
Well, that would be Patrick, Comp, and Upset.
Oh, are you intentionally excluding yourself?
Unforgiven, not on it. Flocket, not on it. Okay.
Well, as much as I love that I got placed on the top 3 All-Stars, and so did they. No, I wouldn't personally put them there. Like, come on, like sure. They did well in this year, but both of them are rookies, and like upset Patrick, and even he's played in LEC before. They're like more experienced, and to me they were overall better. Not saying that they're better by much, but I think they're better. So
all right, get him, G2 fanboys. He said he thinks Flocket is trash. We heard it right here. You know, this guy's an ego, even though G2 beat them. So this is where you got to take it out on him.
Thing is, even though people get mad about that, to me, it's not even that controversial a take, because to me, it's just a logical way that positions work in games. I'll give you the analogy, Neon. There's certain types of strikers in football who don't actually have to score that many goals. You know, maybe like they're like a fucking 10 or an off 9 and they like set the other guy up or whatever. But at the end of the day, no matter how much they set the other players up, if they only themselves score like 7 goals a season, 1, they're not one of the best strikers, and 2, they might even be the best player on their team. If they have some like amazing midfielder like fucking Man City does, who scores like 20 goals a season, that guy's probably a way better player, even though you play a striker. So I think people just get the roles confused. Like if people think if G2's the best, Flackhead must be the best. It's like, it doesn't really work that way. Their team, they're almost understanding that he's like one of the role players. They understand that and how they set it's obvious how they set the game up. The analogy I always used to give was when people would tell me like all the time that like the weak side top laner was the best top laner. It's like logically his own team's telling you that's not the best player by the fact that how they set up the map.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to AD carry especially, it's sometimes really hard to say who's better and who's not, because like it's like you are as good as the rest of your team kind of is. Like it's not the role where like the difference gets to shine a lot of the times, because like sometimes I wonder like what if G2 picked me up, you know, like what if Mad Lions picked me up, because both of these teams, they had like star players, they had players who've won EU, who've won like a lot, and then they both teams like got a rookie AD carry, right? So I'm like wondering like, okay, what if that AD carry was me? Like maybe I would have done better, maybe not, but like ultimately you can see that it's just hard to not perform when you have this much of a team, like these good of a teammates, right?
Yeah. By the way, that's even what I would say. What I would throw back to the Flackhead fans of the world is this. So you guys, it'd be cool if he was on Misfits, or if he played in Astralis, or he played a SK Gamer, would you? I'd like to see that split if you guys tell me this guy's the best. Just show me.
Oh,
I
it's
mean,
so
we-
much harder.
we can only speculate, right? But that's
Yeah,
just
of
the reality of the
course. Yeah, of
situation.
course.
Like sometimes you'll just never know, you know. Like what if fucking Patrick was on G2? Like maybe that team would have been able to contest with like LPL teams, or what if Upset was there? And it's just like these scenarios, they'll never happen, but you can only wonder, right? And I think it's just like AD carries like this kind of role that like it sometimes does not matter too much. Like I know this myself, you know. So
AD carry is weak this patch. I was just kidding.
yeah, okay, but like you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
Yeah, no, as opposed to jungle where, you know, if all your laners are inting, you know, the game feels great to play. You can really just show your dominance in just 1v9. So agreed.
Yeah, I mean,
Agreed.
Indeed.
AD carries are victims of team diff.
bro.
On some
That's
level.
actually true.
On some level.
I mean,
Depends on the meta.
I'm trying not to cope, but it's like Reckless. This guy was to Worlds, right? And he's obviously really good within you. Like he's a historically proven player, and then you like going by that logic, if you put him into an ERL, like that ERL team cannot lose a single game, right?
Yeah, people thought he would stomp and be the MVP. Yeah, exactly.
But like as good as he is, he still can't play the game for his teammates, unfortunately. So
Yes.
like,
By the way, that's even a factor
Oh, you
I
triggered
also
Thorin.
think. No, that's even like a real factor that you have to consider, which is this. You know, when people say that, because that's what they've all told me. You'll love this, Neon. I've been told by Ravens fans all year long, well, of course you can't expect him to be the best now. He's playing in the RL team. It's like, who do you think my mate Forgiven was playing with? The joke is half of you couldn't even name his fucking support players. They were nobodies or they were all washed. Like, most of them are just coaches now. They're not even active players. Like, that's why I always thought that comparison was so unfair all over the years. Because what people did is act like ADC is mid lane and you could just solo kill the other guy all game and just shit on him. Like, that's not even the fucking role. It has been like that for years and years. Like, maybe ADC was like that, I don't know, 2013 or something. Like, you have to go back pretty far, guys. And also, here's the other thing I want to ask you about Neon, because I thought you'd be the perfect person to ask about this. One of the things I always tell people I really like about watching this Misfits team play is it's like a breath of fresh air. It's like I've gone back in time 4 years and I'm seeing real 5v5 front-to-back team fights where the AD carry and the mid laner are going to do all the damage and win the team fight and everyone has to peel for them. It's like, that's League of Legends to me. The last few years of League of Legends have just been all these fucking non-stop dragon skirmishes where it's half a fight, it's not quite a full fight, and it's just like a million fucking cooldowns and people doing all these dashes all over the map like that, and then everyone's on the ADC like, why did he just get blown up straight away? It's like, it's not like it's fucking 2014, is it? I'm not just playing Lucian with like a fucking tank peeling for me. Like, I think it's madness to try to play ADC now. It must be so fucking hard, mate.
yeah, I mean, like I think if this is the case for like the next upcoming years, I think it's going to be like quite boring because the games will look very familiar. So like what I would personally like Riot to do is like I would like them to make like red buff, blue buff more strong or like more impactful in like it's being taken away, or like make some like mini objective, you know, that is not Drake, not Herald. It's less important, but it would like force you to like skirmish on top side, for example, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Like
I 100% agree with this, because right now blue buff and red buff are worse than a camp. You know, like you literally care more.
Yeah.
Like they give
Sure.
less experience, by the way. Like a lot
That's
of people
wild,
that don't
innit?
jungle
I
don't
know.
realize
That's
this.
wild.
But like if you go like red, blue wolves, you don't hit level 3. If you go like Gromp, blue wolves, you hit level 3. Like Gromp and Krugs give more experience than a red buff. So, or like a red buff or a blue buff. So people don't even care anymore with like the jungle respawn timers and stuff. You don't even care anymore if you get 3 buff. That's not a thing. You don't even talk about it. Like when was the last time you're like, oh shit, like this jungler got 3 buff.
True.
Like he's going to be out of it. Part of the reason why all these dog junglers are coming back is that it's not a good trade-off to like lose half of your for the enemy team. It's not good to counter jungle half of the enemy's jungle and get a kill on the other side and like lose a kill on the other side of the map. Whereas before, if you were playing like in season like 6 or season 9, some of these full clear metas, if you died but the enemy jungler like got like 3 quadrants of the jungle, the game would just be over because of the spawn time, because of the amount of experience that they'd be able to accumulate off of that. I think right now part of the reason why the meta is what it is because people think that, look, you just need to let your lanes play freely. Like half the times I'm watching LPL, the jungler will do like 3 or 4 camps. It might not even be a buff. Sometimes they'll just do like 3 camps topside, Raptors, and then they just go and walk around and try to find the enemy jungle. Because if they find the enemy jungle, then the lanes can play freely and they can like trade and do all this stuff.
Right.
And they'll give up anything in order to just be able to dive like a turret or just be able to get a small advantage. So I think there'd be way more skill expression in the game if people needed to react to their own jungle camps, like how Neon is saying. Like if you got like a skirmish around there, then you'd suddenly like have another thing that would make the game interesting. Where right now the game is played in just 5-minute intervals, right? It's like, okay, like once you get into mid game, oh, we did dragon, all right, like see you in like 5 minutes. Like maybe there'll be like somebody trying to burn cooldowns 2-3 minutes before the Drake, but you don't really get much action. It's just like so streamlined.
Yeah, I think the durability patch has kind of like made it more stale, as in like this kind of like mini objective, which previously would have been like a level 3 tower dive, is like harder to pull off now, right? Which is like something that I would sometimes miss, for example, and I would want to see in a game.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I even think that's actually a negative addition to the game, because I always thought in League of Legends one of the best things was the tower dive, and it makes it so exciting if it's like Worlds and someone's going for some gamble where you know their comp will be behind unless they get off this fucking gank or something. That makes it super hype. I've always thought, by the way, I would have even gone a different route on that one. Like I always thought they should have had a more strict, like obvious logic to that where the tower hits work. Like the first, like if 2 people go in, it's like maybe like the highest health one always takes the hit or something. I would have even done something to enable dives. I always thought if you pull them off like those Korean teams used to, it looked fucking sick when you get in, get out, and you don't even lose anyone. It looks amazing. It's one of the best things to probably to see in laning phase.
Well, I think you can still see this. It's just not that common, right? Like dives still happen. They're just not as common, and more often than not, they can actually go wrong nowadays.
Yes.
Which is like also kind of fun. But yeah, I mean, I do understand your point too.
I mean, that was even literally, by the way, what we basically referenced earlier about that Lucian Army game. That was what ruined that whole game, if you remember, was that the Mad Lions fucked up that top dive and then like lost all the kills to fucking Malrang. So that actually, the joke is them doing that dive ruined the whole game. They were actually going to lead before that. They were in a great position, and then the problem is by trying to get ahead, they fucked themselves, didn't they? So
that's one of the qualities I've noticed with Mad Lions is it feels like they will prep a play, but they will have, there's no way that they will ever call it off. If they're like, we are diving this lane, they're just going to make it fucking happen regardless. You know, they'll just be like, yeah, we already invested so much. We have the move. Like we need to go for this. They don't have the restraint to like look at the situation and be like, hold on, we are 3v2 Jarvan, diving a Jarvan that has EQ up. Like this is not the situation we want to be in. Like maybe we just like, you know, back off of it. Okay, jungler had to show, take a crab, like take smaller wins. So, I mean, that's one of the issues with the game. But I mean, what's crazy to me is that now we're starting to see dives again. There was like no dives in the beginning of the split outside of LPL. Like, so like LCS, LEC, there was like almost no dives. We had all those super stale games around like week 3, week 4, where, you know, the Astralis XL game that happened in week 4, I believe. That one was just torture to fucking watch, where there's 1 kill at 18 minutes. All the tier 1s are up. No one's doing anything. So I just feel like the way that you create action is to make jungle camps worth a damn. Then you have to obviously balance jungle, because if jungle camps are worth more, then in solo queue, if the jungler's allowed to just collect all of his camps, he's going to be fucking stronger, and, you know, you're going to have the whole, like, jungle is OP. But right now, like, I don't know. I just feel like there's not much variety in the way teams are playing. It seems like every team is essentially playing the same way outside of North America, and I don't even think the way that North American teams play has anything to do with what they believe is the strongest. It's more just them trying to, like, band-aid themselves as much as possible. It's like they're the AD carries in NA are just like playing really poorly right now based on, you know, what you'd expect. So there's like, okay, well, at least like MF and Jinx, like we can not, like, there's limits to how fucking bad we can play, you know? Like, which to me is like, I don't even believe that they believe themselves, you know? Like, I don't think that they're like, we think MF and Jinx are just fucking strong. I think they're just like scared to play the stuff that they're supposed to be playing. They're like, fuck, man.
That's literally not a joke, by the way. The actual game 5 between Team Liquid and EG Neon, that was what they drafted. It was Misfortune and fucking Jinx. Jinx is still played now in LCS. Like, but they never got the memo on that one, mate.
It's not even that it's just played Neon. It's that it's blinded when like Draven and shit and like Lucian, Nami, all this stuff is up. And they just blind the Jinx. So
like, and they even, by the way, they even had a comp. This is Team Liquid, by the way. They had a comp that was like everyone just is protected the fucking Jinx. It's a hold. It's like one of your comps from like Spring. It was mental, mate. Like, I don't even know what world they're in, mate. They have such a different vision of the game.
It's not even a vision of the game. It's just a mentality. Like, they're just scared because they're like, fuck, we're supposed to win. Let's just make sure, like let's try to do the most safe thing possible to still be able to win. Like, they have no belief in like, oh, I'm gonna rise to the occasion and perform in this game. It is just like, we are gonna try not to lose, which is one of the things that I've always hated about NA, and that was one of the reasons I actually respected EG's performance at MSI, even though they did get shit on. I thought that they were actually playing with more freedom. Like, they were trying to play the game, and like sometimes they would just die and lose. That to me is like way more respectable than the shit we normally see. I made a joke on Twitter about like the Giga Chad LPL mindset where they're like blind picking fucking Fiora and Jax in like the last game. They're like, yeah, we just lost last game with Fiora. It is game 5 RNG versus LG. Whoever wins goes to Worlds. And Breathe is like, yeah, give me Fiora again. It's like, oh, well, the other guy plays Jax. He's been like, Ollie's been playing Jax. He's been dominant with it the whole fucking playoffs. You know, if you fuck up this lane, it's like a skill matchup. If you fuck up this lane, Jax is going to be a fucking monster. Just picks the Fiora, pops off, they win the game. NA, the Virgin NA mindset, MF versus Jinx. Like Seraphine, MF, Jinx, like let's just play as safe as possible. Stand, like don't even try to fucking auto attack. Just stand as far away from the fight as you can and just throw your ultimate and pray that we win. Like that's the difference of the mindset. It's so infuriating, especially when, you know, the person that's doing that is Hans Sama, man. He was the Draven guy in EU. He was the guy who was playing Draven when it wasn't meta. Now Draven is up every game. The enemy team is blinding fucking like Danny was playing Ezreal, MF, like all this shit in playoffs. And he won't even pick the Draven. He's just, yeah, Jinx every game. Anyways.
Wait. You're telling me that Draven was open against Hansam and he didn't pick it? I was assuming that it's like banned every game.
Oh, hell
Dude,
no.
Nowadays, people don't even respect it and they know he won't pick it, so they just leave it out of draft. Yeah, for real.
Go. If you look up the drafts, it's just the
wild.
most maddening thing.
Yeah.
It just, you can't even believe that Hans is the same player. This guy came to NA, he's getting paid fucking $2 million a year to be picking Jinx blind in Summer Split with Draven and all this fucking stuff up, especially when you consider Hans was supposed to be, like, in Europe, he was one of the most lane-dominant AD carries. That's what people knew him for. It was like Draven, Kalista, like, this guy's a fucking beast in lane. And then he's playing against Danny, who is notoriously weak in lane. Like, that was Danny's biggest weakness. Is he's really good in teamfights, can't really lane.
Early. Yeah, of course.
And then we don't even have that dynamic. I don't know. I don't even know how we got here, but, like, just whatever you said just triggered me into the fucking NA, like, rant of how, like, our mindset has shifted.
What about this then? One thing I want to know is this. Do you actually think that, right, this will sound like a weird question, Neon, but because obviously now the Fnatic team will be going to Worlds, maybe they're even going to be in the finals. Like, yeah, I think we're all picking them to go to the final and play G2. So by the way, finishing second and third isn't actually the end of the world. Sure, Super Team should probably win a split, but going to Worlds, going to the finals, like these are things, these are the basic requirements. I want to know if you think this. Do you think they will actually keep this lineup in Fnatic though? Do you think they will make changes no matter what? Do you think they have to win to not make changes? Because that's the problem. Like I said, until before last weekend, everyone would say this team's going to get torn apart in the offseason. You know, maybe no one stays, maybe one player. If they win or something, because they seem like some of the players are pretty cocky. Like I think some of the players, it's a bit like Vitality. They all thought if they made the playoffs, it'd all work out. They'd probably be in the finals. Like, you think they make player changes in this team? Is it broken?
I think Fnatic is like one of the orgs that definitely cares about how they're performed and like the actual results. And they also have this fan base and this enormous pressure on them to perform. So I feel like if this team doesn't win the split, doesn't do well at Worlds, there'll be changes just because of how the nature of the sport and the nature of the organization. And I mean, just like there will be probably a change in most of the teams. Like maybe the winning team won't change a player because they're all contracted, but that's like the nature of League. Like I think Fnatic will make changes just like any other team, right? Unless they, of course, win EU, do all Worlds, they probably might not make a change then. But yeah, I mean, they will most likely make a change, yes.
What do you think, Dom?
You think Misfits will make a change for next split when they're in the elite? Oh, wait, never mind. Sorry.
What a heretical idea. No, here's the thing. I actually, by the way, that also leads into the other angle, which is I actually get the sense, because G2 probably is about to go back-to-back, they're going to go to Worlds. Like, I don't know that they can go deep at Worlds. I think they'd probably be like, get out of groups is probably the best you can hope for if you look how stacked some of the other teams are. But this is the problem. That's going to be the most interesting discussion to me, is if G2 wins both splits, right? Carlos has told me in past seasons that he does actually believe in that mindset, like he did after season 8, where it's like, even if you have a really great Worlds run, if you really think you can get a better player, you change players, you try and upgrade, because the idea is you're not playing against the same people you played against last year, you're playing against next year's rosters, right? But I do get the vibe, by the way, if they win this LEC and do half decent at Worlds, they're just going to keep the exact same lineup. And that actually, I think, might be the very interesting angle, because here's the thing. We're talking about all these other angles as to how their bot lane's been sort of like, they've got the edge in the draft and things like that. But if they have to go to a normal meta again, I think that can become a weakness again. Like, if I were them, it's like I've said, I know everyone now will go, it's obvious now, I thought this before playoffs. If I was G2 and I saw the way Fnatic was falling apart, I'm just waiting until the offseason and just saying, right, upset, just come join our teammates. Let's make the real super team. Come to our squad.
I mean, it really depends, right? Because, I mean, if you win EU back-to-back with a rookie bot lane, like, they're obviously not bad. They're obviously
They're doing
good,
the job.
Right?
Yeah.
They're obviously good. So, like, sure, you could go for the theory. in theory, better player, but if you can win EU with 2 rookies, then I think they have 100% deserved their shot and their spot, and like it's up for the next year to like see if they can actually improve and become the star players they're meant to be and like meant to mold into. So I mean, I just couldn't see the logic for benching like a rookie after winning 2 splits, right? Even if arguably they weren't the best player and they got like really good teammates, but like I still wouldn't do it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like this is something that Thorin and I normally talk about, which is there's this like fallacy in League of Legends where they believe, I mean, it's in pro sports too, but they believe the progression of rookies is just like linear, where it's like,
Yes,
they started at year 1. If they did this well in year 1, well, then they're going to be better in year 2. Where like a lot of times some players that are weak at laning like will just stay weak at laning, like they won't necessarily have that become a strength. Like it's not like the experience of laning versus all these top tier AD carries allows them to get better at it. And especially I would argue that with the way the G2 plays, when they're playing like Senna Seraphine lanes consistently, how are you supposed to like be improving your laning on lane dominant picks or like be able to play some of these?
Yeah, exactly. You're not having to play the proper lane.
Yeah, so I mean, that would be the thing that I would argue. Like, I think that they probably should stick with it. I mean, unless they have like really lofty goals. Like, imagine if they're like, oh no, we're gonna try to fucking like actually win worlds next year. You know, like we really want to do that. Sure, but if they're like content with winning EU and like doing well at worlds, if they're happy being back to that level, because you got to remember, it's not like they've won their whole experience. Like this is coming off the year that they had their biggest like downturn ever. So
for sure,
I'm not sure if their mentality just aligns with like, oh, we need to like just try to be the best in the world, or if they're just going to be happy with their results and know that like the players are good enough.
You also need to keep in mind that, I mean, historically speaking now, if you think you have the best roster on paper, you went for the super team, you actually don't have it. So,
yeah.
I'll even say that's actually one factor I do think you might even be right, and maybe this is the year if they win, they keep the same team anyway. Because I think the lesson they've taken, whether this is just narratives or what, I think the lesson even G2 actually took internally, Neon, was that the reason why Flackett is better than Reckless is not because he's a better ADC, it's because it helps the vibe of the team, and he kind of knows that he's going to be the tertiary carry, and the others can. I think they actually like what it brought like to the unit and the squad, and obviously he does seem like a cool guy and all that jazz. But my point was just more that it's like Dom says. I think this might be the best they already played. It's pretty good. Like that's, by the way, they've had some banging playoff series. Like in the spring, he was fucking killing it in that lower bracket. So my problem is, I just don't know. Like the joke actually is, by the way, when you were saying that, Dom, Neon actually is the rare example of what people normally talk about. He actually did gradually get better year on year as he came in LEC. But here's the joke: no one actually believed in him. So he just started to stay on all the bottom feeder teams and just make one of them good. Because normally I agree. Everyone always just assumes like the rookie will get like, I don't know, let's say like 10% better every split. But it's like they don't. Also, you have splits that are bad. You go down sometimes, don't you? Or you get worse, or the meta fucks you completely.
Well, I mean, I feel like the way you actually get better at those things is if you like challenge the things that you are not good at, where you're like, okay, we're not gonna lane, we're gonna just make him lane with like these very volatile lane matchups over and over again on stage. Sure. I feel like those are the experiences that will actually build you as a player, instead of just like obviously playing Senna Seraphine. I mean, look, I think that in theory you could say like, all these things. I'm mainly talking theoretical. If I had to guess, I mean, with how much Carlos likes Flackett, like he's always had a soft spot for Flackett. He just believed in this guy from when he was super young. And then with the results, like I don't think there's any chance they would change him. Personally, I'm just giving like the argument as to like why a lot of times like teams end up getting worse by not improving the things that they're bad at. I mean, we see it all the time in NA where you keep the same roster together and you're like, oh, but like with this extra split, this extra time working together, they're going to improve. And it's like, I mean, there's really no guarantee that ends up happening. Like sometimes you've just hit your limit, and a lot of players don't have linear progression. A lot of players get worse. I mean, look at Tactical, for example. Like now he's a laughing stock of NA. Anytime he plays, like, look at how many times he inted, like 3-4 times in a game. In his rookie year, part of the reason why he even got a spot on TSM is he had so much hype from his rookie year that it was like, okay, maybe even though he's only played 3 splits, maybe the last 2 were bad, and he actually just has like, a really high level of performance in him, and we can still like fix this guy. I mean, I don't know. It's all over the place. If you look historically at players, it's really all over the place with like progression. Like some players get better, some players get worse, some players stay the same. I feel like the people are just way too they're way too hopeful about improvement generally when watching players.
My joke would be this, right? the joke is this, Dom, because of how he was playing and how badly he was playing, one of his coaches, Tactical's coaches, told him, like, look, you don't have to just play solo queue and NA. You can go and watch, like, ProView and VODs of the top LPL bot laners, learn how they play. But the problem is, Tactical only downloaded the Jackie Love VODs, so didn't help anything, did it?
I mean, he doesn't even have the upside of Jackie Love anymore.
No, that's the problem. I know Jackie Love also will carry the fuck out of half those games, too.
Yeah,
True.
I mean, people like, well, obviously Jackie Love like like a couple times in the finals and just be like, so Jackie Love just isn't that good. It's like, no
he's mega.
This guy is a fucking cracked AD carry. Like, if any of these guys went to Worlds and they had to play against Jackie Love Mark, I don't think that it's gonna be like, we sent like some of our best like leading AD carry. Like, look, I'm all for how Upset and Hilly have been playing domestically up until this point. If they play Lucian Nami the way they've been playing Lucian Nami, they're gonna get fucking rolled at Worlds. Luckily, that shit's getting nerfed out of the game.
I saw on Twitter, Neon, that you actually watched some of the videos of the LPL players and the stuff. So what are your thoughts on the top Asian AD carries? Like, obviously, like the big names, like the Viper, Jackie Love, these players, like obviously, Ruler, Gala. What do you think of these guys?
Yeah, while I've never had the pressure to like scrim against them in like a team environment, I did bootcamp in Korea a long time ago. And I did play against them in solo queue, and like my conclusion is that they're just way better than us, and they're like robots. And I mean, right now the meta in LPL is kind of boring because like when I watch the Zeri Serum matchup, it's mostly just farming, and then you play well team fights, right? So there's not much action in lane. But it's just like I've been to Korea, and ever since I knew why they're so good, and it's because of the culture. Like the gaming is just like widely accepted there, and everyone plays. Therefore, like you get so many better players, and like I don't see how we can match up to them if gaming is not mainstream in here, And
it's also a mindset
that's just
thing.
Insane.
It's also a mindset thing. Like when I listen to like, so for example, they do like behind the scenes content for like LPL teams, and it seems like they're just like it seems unhealthy to a point, but it's almost like their performance is tied in with like their value as a person, like internal. Like they actually believe that if I play bad, like I'm just like worse. Like I'm just like a worse person.
Yeah,
where it's like it's almost like in the West it is detached. It's like hey, like do your best. Like whatever happens. Like you're not trained to just have that mindset where it's like if your results are poor, you're just inferior. I mean, I was listening to WE Coach where they were like losing in the split. They obviously had like a horrible split. They went 0-16. And in the thing, he's like, hey, like the results mean that we are all trash and I am trash too. That's just what he's telling
he actually called himself trash. So
yeah. He called himself trash. He's like, you guys are all trash. I am trash too. We all fucking suck. Like,
I love that though. I actually love that he put himself in. I know. If people don't know, like, I'll contrast that because that is, by the way, what loads of the behind the scenes LPL stuff's like. It's like they are so harsh on each other. But here's the contrast. Do you remember when Clutch Gaming lost to like 100 Thieves in Game 5 in their first split? And like David Lim was just going like, he did a whole speech where he was sort of like, even though we lost, like, I'm so proud of the way we all came together and, we're going to get him next split. And that's like, and then you watch the LPL one, it's like, we are all subhuman trash who will never be good. And like, it's better now. I know.
Yeah, I mean, it's also so just their responses to pressure are way different. Like there was a time where EDG is 0-2 in a best of 5, right? This is when they reverse swept, and they're 0-2 in this best of 5, and Kenju is just going like ham. He's like, you guys are playing fucking scared. Like he's like yelling at them. You guys are playing fucking scared. Like I would rather see you guys win the game or lose the game standing up than win the game on your knees. That's what he said. He's like screaming at them, like actually to their faces. And I'm just thinking about what would happen if they tried that like in a Western team. Like the team is down 0-2 and you just have like the rogue coach go in there, be like, you guys are all playing like pussies. Like what the fuck is wrong with you guys? He just starts going off. Like I just feel like the next game, like it would never work. In that circumstance, it actually ended up working, but like I can't imagine what the response would be in a Western team if like that's the type of shit they said.
I think it's definitely like a culture thing because I can't imagine like your coach in an EU environment or an NA environment screaming at you. Like that guy would get instantly fired because he'd be like, oh, I felt bad after. You would say this to the management, then they're like kicking the coach instantly. But in like China, this is like probably normal, right? And while I do believe that this could be beneficial because like for some people, like feeling bad is actually the best motivator, I believe. For me, like feeling bad is like the thing that motivates me to do the best, right? So like not having someone like tap on your shoulder and say it will be better next time, like I would definitely like to see more of that, you know, but I don't know if he'll ever. I don't know if he ever will. I don't know if there's ever going to be a team where like coaches will be like that, or whether it's ever going to be accepted in the EU. But like personally, I would like to see that happen to me and to a team and see what it does, right? Because I don't think it's going to work long term against Asian teams if you keep it like this.
I mean, I would say that there is nuance to it, right? Like Kenju is like one of the most well-respected coaches. He was the coach of EDG last year, where they won Summer and Worlds, and then he actually changed to RNG, and they won Spring and MSI. So like he kind of had an unofficial Grand Slam, winning 4 of the major tournaments in a row. And the thing is, there's dynamics to it, but I feel like coaching, like you have to be able to like tune into like what your players need, and you know, in that moment, he chose the right thing, and I think that's why the guy has so respect. Like, I'm not saying you just need to scream at your fucking players every time, but I just feel like it's almost like when people choke, it's like you're not supposed to ever address that there's any choking going on.
Yes.
Like even as a teammate, like this is how it was when I was a player.
Yeah,
if somebody's like having a really bad series, it's almost like, oh, ignore it. It's like, oh, you entered the entire. I didn't even notice you entered the whole game, bro. Like I was doing my own thing. Like you're almost supposed to ignore like problems as instead of addressing them in the middle of a best of 5, because you feel like, well, what happens if I say something critical and he plays even worse? Like what happens if I bring him down even lower? So I just feel like there's just some like there's some disparity between how people actually like feel about the game in the East and in the West, just based off like context that we see even behind the scene from coaches.
I'll also shade in, I think another reason why they can do that though in China and Korea is the sheer number of people who are really good and trying to be pro. Because the point is, you can't actually tell a guy who's even a star. Like I've used this example before, but if people aren't aware, the guy that everyone in China said was the best top player in the world joined top esports. You won't have seen him this year because he got almost immediately benched Zoom, and they brought in a guy Wayward who was nobody, and the Wayward guy's better, so they don't need Zoom anymore. Zoom can just fuck off, and they can tell him. That's why you can say to a star player, like, hey, if you don't fucking get you together, you're out. Like, you can't do that if it's Caps. Like, we haven't got anyone coming in now. Like, whoever our sub is never going to fucking be better than Caps. So there is that as well. I will say though, Dom, when you say that though, I wouldn't do it to all teams, but specifically when Rogue is down 0-2 in the playoffs, I do wish I just heard that like Stone Cold Steve Austin like battle smash, like that's well, who the hell's that? That's Dom's music. And then you just come in the fucking room, you're like, listen, Odoamne, get the fuck off that carry pick right now. It's nah duty only for you. You're in prison, right? Trimby, fucking, get it locked in. Cobb, we're going Caitlyn again. Like I'm just fucking go off. Larson, what are you gonna do? Pick Azir and lose like a pussy? Maybe do something this time. You ginger fucking twat. Anyway, just go off completely, basically. See if it actually brings it out of him. Obviously, you wouldn't say anything to Malrang because he's just a Chad. Just you're fine with Malrang. Just don't buy pink quads ever
actually
again.
Tone it down, Malrang. Like buy a couple less pink ones.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
Like, can you just look? All I want to see from you is like when you start clicking towards an item, when you buy an item, just a component, you automatically have to build that component.
That would be a good
into
rule.
The fucking item.
That would unironically be a really good rule. It would. I would implement that tomorrow. Not even joking. That would make him way better. The other thing is it's almost like he is too Korean in that sense because he's trying to get extra credit. He's like the only jungler in history that the coach is like, buy less wards, please buy less wards. Like it's the opposite normally. Like the joke is like self-made probably never bought a fucking ward in LEC. Like you know what I mean? Like these guys just go straight for damage and like what the fuck.
Well, I mean, it's just like it's just things that are instilled into players. Like if you're a jungler, it's like vision is good, but you have to be realistic about what is the vision actually accomplishing me in this game. Like is buying a pink ward and putting it somewhere where I can't defend it and then just buying another one and then having to like drop it somewhere randomly in my jungle just so they don't get the gold from the first one. Is that actually a good use of vision? Or like can we use what we have going for us to make some educated guesses as to what the enemy team is doing? It's almost like people are prepping for things that are not even likely to happen just in case the off chance that it does happen occurs, right? Like it's, oh man, what happens if they do decide to dive this lane? Or what happens if they do decide to do something? It's like, dude, you should be mainly playing for the most likely scenario that you think is going to happen in the game.
By the way, Neon, right, obviously you can explain it in your own words, but like, how would you explain it? What is the situation for you after this split? Like, is there like an option where like they can potentially like keep you under contract or sign you again? Are you going to be a free agent? Do you know what the situation is?
Well,
is it just unknown?
My contract is running out because Misfits is no longer in the LEC, right? So they're gonna terminate my contract. As for what happens with you next year, I have no idea. I mean, I hope I stay in the LEC, but I also know it's a possibility I don't because, like, What if teams are like, oh, this guy has been here for so long, let's just flip it on a rookie because we're not going to win the league anyway.
This is something I want to ask you about, actually, because that's one thing I want to ask. I actually think you've picked the best split ever to potentially be a free agent again. Like, I actually don't think that'll happen, dude. I think for real, like as you saw by how many people were voting you up on all the awards, even players and coaches, I think you will get a better team because I actually get the vibe. Here's the difference. If Spring Split was the last split you played, people might have done that thing they did there, like, oh, it's just because he's gotten the broken Jinx. Jinx is too broken, like anyone could play off that. This split, I actually think you got your respect. Like, you even carried loads of the Civ games, mate, when that was supposed to be just like the counter, like the handshake. Like, oh, it's not as bad. Like, you were doing great this split, man. Don't you think this is your best split ever?
I mean, probably is, but I just know that a lot of things can happen, and ultimately, I think I'm going to be happy wherever I am. And I mean, personally, I want to stay in the LEC, like one way or another, be it fucking player or be it coach or fucking even caster, like I don't care. I just want to like do League of Legends at the highest level, preferably playing because I love playing this game. And
he's doing the Cadril speech again. Go on, keep going.
Wait, did Cadril say that ever again?
No, the joke is that's what he would say, isn't it? I want to be in the LEC. Look, if I can't be a player, can I at least be a coach or a bloody caster or something? I'll even clean up the place, whatever. No, the joke is that's what he could have said, couldn't he?
Yeah,
just more straight shots.
Yeah, I mean, it's the off season, and like it's supposed to be stressful for some people, but I'm like, I feel quite good about my chances this year, right? So I mean, ultimately, I have nothing but to wait and see what happens. Who knows? Maybe I'll come to NA and play some Seraphine for you guys.
Yeah, what do you think, Dom? Surely he goes to a top LEC team now, surely, right?
Well, I mean, at least now, because the thing is, I haven't had I've done one show with Hansama. I don't like really talk to the guy, but at least since we've had him on 2 shows now, if we see Neon come to the LCS and then he just becomes an absolute pussy, like he no longer can carry late game, his positioning's awful, he's getting caught left and right, at least we can ask him what the fuck happened.
That's true.
I don't know how it always goes wrong. Like you get all these players where it's like, I've watched you for literally like 4 years out of my life. I've seen every single game you play. I know you backwards and forwards. You are this player. And then you come to NA, it's like, oh, that's not the same player at all. That's that's somebody else. Like people are so unrecognizable. At least with Neon's case, we could have some idea what actually fucking happened. Like,
yeah, I will keep a diary with my thoughts every day, and I will carefully put them all down, and then make a movie about it.
Yeah. So then we'll see. What will happen is you'll see like gradually how his mentality just like degrades. He stops believing in himself. Eventually, he's just like, lock me in, Seraphine, coach. Put me in the game. Like, I know, he's mental in it.
No, I mean it's actually like sad. I mean, you go to the end of it, and you're just gonna see the final diary entry. It's like, well, I hope they leave Seraphine up because that's all that's left for me. And it's like, Jesus, man, really? Like we have really fallen this far.
One other thing I want to ask you, Neon, because this actually is a big factor in what happens in the off-season. As much as people joke about all the poaching, like the real reason poaching will always exist is because pro players who are star players in big teams will always get asked by their team, like, who do you want to sign? Do you think we should sign this guy? And if they happen to have already been friends with that guy or know he's good or played with him, they're going to say sign him, obviously. So like essentially there's always a connection, right? So one of the reasons, like I said about that example before, about how even if Vitality was worse than Misfits, Vitality is going to get scrims that Misfits isn't, right? One of the factors that does play a big role in whether you get into the big teams usually is what your relationship is like with the big stars. So like one thing, it can go both ways. Either like, in my opinion, that's why Kazi's in Vitality. I'd imagine Alfari and Perks just asked for him and said, this is the guy we want. We like him, want to play with him. So it doesn't matter if Opset's better than Kazi. In that scenario, Kazi gets the spot. So the question is this, there's 2 ways you can go. Either you're friends with them, so you get in the team that way. But the other one, this is what I want to ask you, just to check if we're safe here. The other problem is, if you've shit-talked the stars, that has the opposite effect. Now, even if they probably should sign you, maybe they don't, because they remember that one thing. They remember that one little needle you put in when you were beating them in a solo queue. Exactly. Are you a flamer? Do you do it? Do you wreck people?
I mean, okay, so like after Vitality didn't make it to playoffs, I did BM Perks a little bit on Twitter with like him saying on stream how free Misfits is and whatnot.
Okay.
But ultimately, I mean, I believe that I'm BMing someone who can take BM. I can take BM, you know.
Sure.
So I think Perks is like the guy to joke around and be able to take flames. So like I wouldn't BM someone who I think can't take it, you know. And if they hate me because I BM them, then so be it, you know. Like it's fine.
Yeah, I mean,
okay, true.
All I'm saying is good luck in LFL next split because you are fucked.
Oh yeah, actually.
I mean, I think the hard thing is this, Thorin. Like you start looking at it, and it's like, yeah, surely Neon should like go to a team in LEC. It's a no-brainer if you're getting all pro second team. Like, you should just have a spot in the next split. The question is, when you start going down the roster, which one is actually going to take him? Like, if Fnatic has upset, and then G2 has Flocken, we've already talked about the fact that like he's probably pretty secure in his spot there. And then you look at Rogue with Comp, who's played really like pretty well. Relatively young player by LEC standards. You look at Mad with Unforgiven. It's like it starts to become like really hard to find slots at LEC because most teams look like they're pretty content with the AD carries that they have.
Yeah, definitely. It's not an easy thing, right? Like there's a lot of competition knocking on the door every year. So it's just how it is, ultimately. Like pro player careers are fairly short, so that's just the nature of it. And like all I can do is like hope that I secretly didn't fuck someone's moms in the offseason or something.
There's the thing, even though, as you say, I agree, if you look how the teams themselves would look at it, if I'm playing Football Manager, though, like, I don't give a fuck. I thought Unforgiven was the best rookie this split. I'd fucking trade Neon instantly. For a start off, Neon can win team fights. That's the main flaw Unforgiven has. He's an AD carry who's not actually that fucking godlike in team fight. Like, come on, mate. Like, that's an easy swap for me. I'd even swap out Flacken, like I said. I'd go for the upgrade there. What's the other one? XL's the other one. Look, I think Patrick's good, but, mate, people talk like he's Neon, like he carries all these fights. So he carries some. Even then, mate, if the back's against the wall, it's game 5. Is Patrick going to fucking 1v9 the game? Probably not. I've seen it not happen a few times.
He's the player that everyone just respects the fuck out of.
He's like the player's player for some reason, isn't he? Like they always big him up tons.
Everyone thinks that Patrick is a fucking beast. I mean, even Neon said that he thought he was top 3.
Yeah, true.
Everyone just thinks that guy is a fucking beast. Cagel talks about, when he played with him, how it was, and we pretty much have Patrick carry the game when we lose. So I don't know. He's just a player's player. It's really hard. Like when you go through all of the spots in LEC, then you even go to like the lower spots, and for some reason, like SK really just likes Jesu. Like they just really like Jesu. Or you'd think that a player like that, like if you've been in there for 4 splits and you're like still okay, but you're not anything special, you'd think that you'd be looking to make a move. Seems like they never.
Wait a minute. To be fair, we're only looking mainly at the playoffs. The obvious one is Vitality, by the way. Yeah, I would do that move tomorrow if I was them. Yeah. Who the fuck wouldn't? That's it. Because part of their problem was the fucking bot lane. Like, I would swap that immediately, mate. And I even reckon, like, I don't know how much. Do you know Labrov well? I mean, you must have played with him a bunch in solo queue, right?
Yeah, I don't know him well. I just think this. I mean, I know this guy individually is good, right, from solo queue.
He's mechanically strong. I feel like you'd like to play with him.
I mean, I would definitely like to play with him, but I mean, ultimately, it's like
we're trying to get Neon a job right now.
Would you
like to play with him? Yeah, I mean, I think Greece is a great country too, right? Like you just really like their culture.
We forgive him for all that stuff with the economy. Don't worry about it. It's a few years ago now. I don't give a fuck, mate. I'm not going to Greece anyway. If I am,
all right, this is why you don't have Thorin as your fucking agent.
No, I don't. I won't ever be agent. If anything, I have to actually propagandize against you. That gets you fans. If I hated you, you'd have all the fans in the world, mate. I know. Everyone have to defend you.